Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Family Drama Reddit Stories, where betrayal cuts deep and healing hits harder. Today's story isn't just about a broken promise or a family misunderstanding. It's about a teenage girl who worked 2 jobs to chase her dream of becoming a pilot, only to find out her own parents were planning to drain her college fund to pay off her brother's luxury car debt. But this isn't just a story about money. It's about sacrifice, betrayal, and one girl's quiet revenge to break the cycle and rise above it all. Stay with us, because what she does next will leave you speechless. You know, I used to think that if I just worked hard enough, if I kept my head down, stayed out of trouble, and proved myself, then maybe one day they'd finally see me. Not just as the only girl in a house full of boys. Not as the afterthought between my loud older brother and my needy little one. But as someone worth cheering for, too. I'm 15. And for as long as I can remember, I've wanted to be a pilot. Not just some vague dream I scribbled in a notebook, an actual specific goal. I researched every training program, every cost. I even printed out a checklist I kept above my bed with every tiny step. Babysit, mow lawns, make enough to pay for flight school. Start with simulators, shadow someone if I can. Work harder than anyone else. Because if I wanted this life, my life, I knew I was going to have to build it myself. My parents? They're not monsters, but they've always had a way of seeing my older brother as the one worth investing in. He's the golden boy, big dreams, even bigger mistakes. But somehow, those mistakes always get cleaned up. My mom says he's just figuring things out. My dad calls him a late bloomer. Me? I'm expected to be responsible, to understand, to sacrifice. When my brother left for college, my parents paid for his accommodations, books, even sent him extra cash on weekends. And I didn't complain. I kept saving, kept working, because I knew they wouldn't be there to help me the way they helped him. And then, just 2 weeks ago, he showed up with a brand new car. I remember walking past the driveway and thinking it belonged to one of his friends. Shiny black paint, leather seats, brand logos everywhere. It didn't scream college student. It screamed, I'm living a life I can't afford. He looked so proud, told me he got it on a loan from the bank. I was stunned. He didn't even have a job. I asked if our parents knew and he just shrugged, said they'd be cool with it. And I, naively, stupidly, offered to help him look for jobs. I even offered to drop his resume off around town. Because that's who I was. The helpful little sister. The fixer. But I didn't realize that behind my back, they were planning to use my college fund to fix his mess. That night, it was just after dinner. My parents sat me down in the living room. They said it like it was no big deal. That family helps family. That he just needed a boost, and I'd get it back eventually. They didn't ask, they told me. And I felt something inside me crack. It wasn't just the money, it was everything. The years of watching him mess up and still be seen as the golden child. The times I swallowed my anger just to keep peace. The silence they expected from me. I had given them everything I could, and they were still ready to take what little I had left. I remember standing up. My voice was shaking, but I didn't hold back. I screamed. I called them out. I told them they were selfish, that they never cared about my dreams, that if I were the one in debt, they would have let me drown without a second thought. My mother gasped like I had slapped her. My father tried to lecture me about respect, but I didn't care. I walked out of the room and locked myself in mine. I didn't cry, not yet, because something deeper than sadness had taken root that night. And once it settled in, I knew this was the start of something I couldn't come back from. That night, I didn't sleep. I laid there, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word they said. Every moment I'd tried to be the good kid, the helpful one, the dependable one, the one who never asked for too much. And for what? So they could gut my dream without blinking? In the morning, I didn't speak to them. I just got dressed, packed my work apron, and left for my cafe shift. I needed space. But as I served coffee and wiped tables with a smile that wasn't real, something started to build inside me. Not just anger, not just betrayal. Something colder. Clarity. This wasn't just a bad decision. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was deliberate. My parents looked me in the eye and decided their son's mistake was more important than my future. They didn't even flinch. That's what broke me. When I came home that night, my brother was in the living room playing video games. He didn't even look up when I walked in. He didn't have to, because he didn't know. And that's when it hit me. My parents hadn't told him. They were going to secretly drain my college fund to clean up his mess, without saying a word. I stood there frozen, my hand still on the doorknob. I could hear my mom in the kitchen humming like nothing was wrong. I felt my stomach twist. Later, when they were out of the room, I checked my account. The balance was still there, untouched, for now. But I knew it wouldn't be for long. So I called my uncle. My godfather. He worked at a bank across town. I didn't tell him everything, just enough. That I needed help, that something didn't feel right. And without hesitation, he said, "Come by tomorrow." That night, I didn't cry either. I started writing down everything, the balance, the conversations, the names of every job I'd worked, every dollar I'd saved. It felt like building armor. It felt like finally choosing myself. The next day, I sat across from my uncle in his office. Tiny and tired, still in my cafe uniform, holding my phone like a shield. He didn't judge me. He didn't baby me. He listened. And then he got to work. He pulled my account history, reviewed the cosigners, and within minutes said the words that made me feel sick. Legally, they could touch it. You're not 18. I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. But, he added gently, they don't have to. And they absolutely shouldn't. Then he told me something I wasn't expecting. My parents had more than enough money to cover the loan. My brother's debt didn't have to touch my fund. It was never a question of resources. It was a question of priorities. They chose to sacrifice me because they thought I wouldn't fight back, because I always smiled, always helped, always stayed quiet. When I got home that evening, I asked my brother to step outside with me. I told him everything. His face went pale. He hadn't known. And to his credit, he was horrified. He promised he'd refuse the money if they tried. He said he'd talk to them, that he'd fix it. I believed him. But it didn't matter anymore, because the truth was already out. I couldn't unhear it. I couldn't unfeel it. My parents looked at me and saw a safety net. Not a daughter, not a human being, not someone with dreams, just a savings account with a heartbeat. That was the night I packed a small bag. I didn't tell anyone where I was going, just texted my best friend and asked if I could crash. She said yes without hesitation. And when I showed up, she didn't ask questions. She just hugged me and handed me a blanket. For the first time in a long time, I let myself cry. Not because I was weak, but because I was done pretending everything was fine. I wish I could say that leaving made me feel strong. It didn't. It made me feel hollow. I lay there on my friend's couch that night, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above me. I wasn't thinking about college, or flying, or even the money. I was thinking about the little girl I used to be, sitting at the kitchen table after school, excitedly talking about planes, while my mom scrolled her phone, half listening, while my dad nodded but never asked questions. I was thinking about every birthday I paid for my own cake, every time my brother wrecked something and I was the one who had to clean it up. Every time I gave, and gave, and gave, quietly, without asking for anything in return, because I thought that's what love looked like. That's what being a daughter meant. And now? Now I felt stupid, used, replaceable. There was a moment that night when I thought maybe I was the problem. Maybe I'd always been too serious, too stubborn, too intense. Maybe this was just how families worked, and I was the one who didn't understand. But then I remembered what my mom had said the night she told me they'd take the money. She didn't apologize. She didn't ask. She just said, "Your brother needs this more than you do. More than me? More than my years of work? More than every shift I pulled after school, every dollar I saved instead of spending on something nice for myself?" I sat up on that couch, heart pounding, hands trembling. That was the moment. That was the crack. The exact second I realized. They never really saw me, not as a person, not as someone with dreams, with needs, with value. I was the responsible one, the one who wouldn't fight back, the daughter they could afford to lose. My phone buzzed. It was my mom. I didn't answer. She called again, then a text. "Come home, we need to talk." No apology, no "we're sorry," just "come home." I turned my phone over, face down. In that moment, I stopped crying. Not because the pain was gone, but because the part of me that kept begging for their love finally gave up. It was like watching a door quietly close in my chest, a door I had held open for 15 years. The next morning, I sat with my godfather again. I told him everything. He didn't say much, just nodded, occasionally writing something down. When I finished, I asked him a question I never thought I'd say out loud. "Can I live with you?" He smiled. "I was hoping you'd ask." And that was it. No manipulation, no conditions, just a yes. That night, I packed everything I could into a duffel bag and garbage bags. My clothes, my notebooks, my little toy plane from when I was 8. And I walked away. From the house, from the pain, from the part of myself that kept waiting to be chosen. I didn't slam the door. I didn't leave a note. I didn't need to, because this time I wasn't leaving in anger. I was walking into something better. I didn't leave with anger. I left with clarity. That's the thing no one tells you about heartbreak. Sometimes it doesn't end with tears or shouting. Sometimes it ends quietly, with a duffel bag and a decision. And when that decision is yours, truly yours, it changes everything. The morning after I moved in with my godfather, something inside me shifted. It wasn't like the pain disappeared. It was still there, curled up somewhere deep in my chest. But now, there was something else next to it. A quiet voice whispering, "You survived." I started sleeping better, eating again, laughing sometimes when I forgot to be bitter. My godfather never pushed me to talk, but when I did, he always listened. He never said, "You're overreacting." Never said, "But they're your parents." He just let me be. And in that stillness, I started rebuilding. Not dramatically, not with grand gestures, but in small, stubborn ways. I went back to my cafe job. I picked up extra shifts. I told my boss everything, and she hugged me tighter than my own mother ever had. She told me she'd keep the cash tips aside in an envelope, just for flight training. I cried in the break room. Then I wiped my face and went back to pouring coffee. One day, my godfather came home with something. A thick folder filled with information from aviation schools, financial aid programs, and private sponsors. He had printed them all himself. "Pick your sky," he said. "We'll figure out how to get there." I don't think he knows how deeply that sentence landed. He didn't try to save me. He just gave me back the belief that I deserved saving. Meanwhile, my parents kept calling, texting. Even my mom's church friends reached out. Some angry, some trying to guilt me. One woman even said, "God teaches forgiveness, sweetheart. You don't turn your back on family." I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just blocked them, all of them. Because here's what I've learned. Forgiveness isn't opening the door to people who set fire to your home. Forgiveness is building a better one without them. I found a local flight school. They offered scholarships. My godfather co-signed the application, and when the first email came back saying I'd been accepted, I ran down the hallway screaming. I had never felt that kind of joy in my life. Pure, earned, mine. A few days later, I got another message. This one from my mom. No greeting. No apology. Just, "I hope you're happy. You've torn this family apart." I sat with that text for a long time. And then, I laughed. Not out of cruelty, but out of disbelief. Because the truth is, I never tore anything apart. They did. When they chose convenience over honesty. When they chose silence over accountability. When they chose him over me. But this time I chose myself, and I didn't look back. I never replied to that final message from my mother. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because silence can say everything. They say you can't choose your family, but you can choose how much power they have over you. And for the first time in my life, I chose peace over permission. I stopped explaining myself, stopped trying to be the good daughter, stopped shrinking so they could stay comfortable, because I realized something they never taught me. Loyalty is earned, not inherited. And just because someone gave birth to you doesn't mean they get to bankrupt your future. My brother still tries to reach out sometimes. He says he understands now, that he wants to be in my life again. And maybe someday I'll be open to that. But only on my terms, not out of guilt, not out of family obligation. Just because healing, real healing, leaves room for boundaries. Now I'm still working hard, saving, studying, flying whenever I can. And every time I'm in the air, above the clouds, I think of that little girl who sat in her room with aviation posters on the walls, dreaming of something bigger than the life she was handed. I think of her. And I fly for her because no one else ever did. So no, I don't feel bad for walking away from people who never saw my worth. I don't feel guilty for protecting what I've built. I don't regret screaming or leaving or saying no. I only regret not doing it sooner. There's a quote I keep taped inside my flight notebook. You don't owe your peace to the people who caused your storm. And now I live by that. So let me ask you this. If the people who hurt you came back tomorrow, would you welcome them in or close the door? And more importantly, would you finally choose you?